Hello, everybody. Welcome to this very special video. I have with me Thens, Demon Souls Modding. Thens, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I have no idea what to say now. I'm Thens, I'm Demon Souls. I've been doing it for a little while now. I'm the project lead and creator of the project to restore the limit. The Sixth Archstone.
Oh, you're involved in the Archstone stuff?
No.
Oh, I'll cut this part out then. I thought you said that. Oh,
No,
the
I
Sixth Archstone. I'm sorry.
No, not Archthrones, Archstones.
Yeah. Or maybe I'll keep it in.
That's a Dark Souls 3 thing.
Yeah.
If you want.
Well, anyways, I contacted you because I really love Demon Souls. You seem to love Demon Souls. You spend time with Demon Souls at least, and I think there's not a lot of us. I think we need to stick together. These are Demon Souls supremacists.
In a way.
And I've done videos on Demon Souls. I've talked Demon Souls in the past, but what I really wanted to talk to you about was cut content of Demon Souls, because every month it seems like somebody posts something from like the vaults, and I'll be like, huh, an alligator. That's weird. I wonder what else they removed from Demon Souls. And I thought it'd be fun if we do this little exhibition of just the cut phenomena of Demon Souls, and we rank it from how interesting it is to how uninteresting it is, and whether or not it should have been cut from the game.
Okay.
All right. And just so everybody listening understands, you compiled the list for me, so I think I know a fair bit about the things that are here. But there's a couple of things that I'm looking at where I'm like, a gun. Interesting. So yeah, let's get started. The first item we have listed is unknown dagger.
Yeah, so there is just a leftover dagger in the files. There's an icon for it. There's a model for it. It's pretty basic. It's actually a very uninteresting dagger. It doesn't have anything interesting in your word. Uninteresting.
Does it have any? Do we have any flavor text in the description, or is it just like?
It has no text file. It is just a model of a dagger.
It's just like, everything begins in the center, and everything you've said about this dagger has just been like careening down here into the uninteresting section.
It's not that interesting. It's more weapon choices in the game. I think having more weapons would have been nicer, but
yeah, sure.
It's just a dagger. I don't know anything about it.
Well, I don't know. I feel like with this dagger, then, that this unknown dagger, I feel like this. I don't know about like it should have been cut or it should have stayed, but I do think it very much fits on the uninteresting scale.
It's fair enough. I think there's not enough really known about it to say if it should have been cut or if it should have stayed or not. It's just another weapon choice that they didn't go with.
Do you want to put it like here, just in the middle of the uninteresting?
Yeah, that'd probably work.
Yeah, alright. We'll put it there. So, unknown dagger is a nice sort of... this is also like the most interesting part of whenever people do these sort of quadrant videos, is that everything becomes relative to the first thing you arbitrarily put down. So we're probably gonna find, I actually think that unknown dagger, rather than being in the middle of uninteresting, it should be on the should have stayed side, just for it'd be nice to have more weapons.
Yeah.
I don't know if my favorite way to play Demon Souls is the Guts build, where you get the Dragon Bone Smasher and you have a crossbow. I think that way of playing the game, it like puts you so properly in the headspace of things, because you have depleting health, you also have like depleting bolts, and that's actually kind of a problem in certain parts of the game. But yeah.
I was gonna say actually, crossbows are one of my favorite weapons in the game. I don't know what it is about crossbows in the game, but they're just, I don't know, they just have a certain level of like slight jank that's not in Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
Along with that, bolts are probably way too heavy for what they should be.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you carry more than like 50, it's like half of your slot. It's like everything.
Yeah, maybe. I think that I don't know if they do enough damage for how heavy they are, but I do like the idea of consumables should be heavier. I really think that's the case for grass. But I digress. The next item up is the hand axe.
So the hand axe is a little more interesting. We don't have any text files of it, but it's like in a weird realm of both used and unused because so every weapon in the game has a sort of like ghost wandering version of it. When you see players who are in other games, like the ghost versions of them, their weapons defaults to a different model. And the model used for axes is actually the hand axe. So it's an unused weapon which is used for ghosts. But it's like one of those. It's in a weird state then.
That's kind of like in how in Bloodborne, Alfred's outfit, when he has killed Annalise, he's like covered in entrails and blood. They didn't like map that onto him stationary there. That's actually like an alternate version of the Executioner's garb, and you just can't wear it. But it's in the files, and if you could access the files, you could make your character wear it. Where the hand axe is like it's a thing that's there in the game, but you can't have it.
Yeah, there's a similar thing in Demon Souls as well with alternate versions of armor sets, like mainly for the Dark Silver set. Vargulin wears an entire different set of like it's the same model but it has different stats. So it looks the same, but it's actually different.
All right. With a hand axe, then I think that's an interesting weapon. Like not super interesting, but I think it's interesting that like it is there in the game and you can see it.
Yeah, it's kind of just left there.
Yeah, should have stayed. I'm like, yeah, that I wouldn't have minded an axe, another axe. Especially since it has like a bit of history to it. Maybe if you could have an item like in Zelda, you can use those jars, those bottles to catch ghosts. Maybe if you could use one of those jars in Demon Souls to capture the phantoms and steal their weapons.
Maybe that might work.
All right, unknown spear.
So this is in the same territory as the dagger. It is just another spear that's not used. As far as I can remember, there's nothing with it being like the axe where it's a wandering kind of weapon. It's just another spear. I like to call it the pike because it's just like it kind of looks like it's just a spear. You can name it whatever you want.
Okay.
But it's in the same level as not that interesting.
All right. I'm putting it right next. I'm putting it under dagger for people watching, but it's in the same category. Actually, I could put it at the same time, at the same spot, and then just like have layers of it. I think that's like a. But then this area would become really bloated really quickly.
Yes, it probably would.
I think the unknown spear is maybe a little bit more. It's probably less interesting than the dagger because you already have so many better spear options that I don't think anybody would do anything with the spear.
That's fair enough.
Torch.
So the torch is actually one of the only weapons we have that's an actual text file entry.
Oh.
I have the full thing right in front of me. It just says torch and it says illuminate area. Light up the surrounding area of flames for point light source test. So it was a test weapon that was used for I don't really understand point light source, but it's kind of just like moving your light to a different place and then it's fire. Just it's interesting they had a torch to begin with. The model is like I don't think it's used anywhere.
I wonder then. Memory fails me. Is there no torch in Demon Souls natively?
There's no torch.
Huh.
You have the Adjurative Souls that lights up on your person.
Yeah, I love that. I also love how in Dark Souls you have like the dark sign. That's actually an item, and your character has like a bottomless box to explain why you have endless item burden. It's such a like you didn't have to contextualize this stuff in the game, but I love that they did it.
I think it's good they did. I actually love the bottomless box. It's just like,
yeah,
it's such a cartoon fantasy kind of thing. It's just a box you'd hold infinite stuff in.
Yeah,
it's great.
There's a section in the game I'm making where you're able to like walk in swamp water, and I have this. Like, so this is a little bit of a spoiler. if you're standing stationary or walking in the water for too long, blood-sucking parasites start infesting your inventory and start draining your health. And you have to like the in-game rationale, because if your inventory is full, obviously they can't infest your inventory. And the idea is that these bloodsuckers, these parasites, are attracted to humans who have light burdens. Like, they want to add burdens to your life. And that's just like a bullshit way of rationalizing, like, yeah, obviously I can't put them in your inventory when your inventory is full. But yeah, I love that. I love whenever these games do like weird stuff with your inventory. Torch. I think that's like interesting. I think that should have stayed.
I think it would be really cool to have in the game still. Just because it's a cool idea. I don't know why they got rid of it.
Yeah. Imagine Alatria where you can't have your shield. Oh my god, it's so cool. I don't know. I feel like this is even... I keep grabbing onto the actual background and moving it. I hope nobody watching this gets upset at that. Okay. Just gonna start right here in the interesting section. Gun. Is this something left over from like Armored Core 4 or something?
No, actually. It is the Lancer Assault Rifle from Gears of War. It has no textures. It is listed as Weapon 9999, so it is just a test model. It's pretty common to have test models in in leftover in games or in Demon Souls. There's test models for objects, characters, everything. But it's weird that it's from Gears of War. I don't know why it is in Demon Souls. It just is, though.
I'm wondering if Gears of War runs... doesn't that run on Unreal? Maybe.
I don't know what engine it runs in.
Maybe it has something to do with the Havoc physics engine. Both of them use that. But like, it's weird that they'd have... I don't know. I think it's interesting, but I'm happy that it's not in the game.
It doesn't make sense to be in the game. It's very interesting, but it would be very weird if you walked into Dragon God's Arena and just shot him.
Oh yeah. Alright. Now we're up to the items. Executioner Grounds Key. Execution Grounds Key.
The execution... Wait, what was I supposed to say? Yeah, execution grounds, that's right. So in 1-1, you have the gate where you had to have a world tendency, either pure black, pure white, to go through to fight Meralda.
Yeah.
There is a cut key where you just open that door normally.
Oh.
It's interesting, but it definitely should have been cut. I'm glad it's not there, because having more world tendency events is definitely a good thing.
Yeah. I love world tendency. I think they need to do something with that mechanic again. They keep trying to, and they keep cutting it.
We got close in Dark Souls 1.
They got close in Dark Souls 1. Did you know about like the original Dragon Rot mechanic? You probably did.
Maybe not.
From Sekiro. So the idea...
Oh, yes. Okay, I know what you're talking about now. You can explain it anyway, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, like, a big theme in Sekiro is how immortality is parasitic, and I love the idea of, it's contextualized in the narrative that whenever Wolf resurrects, he's leeching off the passive life force of creatures around him, and that's what Dragon Rot is. It's not actually a disease, he's just, like, stealing people's health. And in the in some build of the game, Dragon Rot would actually just flat out kill these NPCs. And I look at that and I'm like, oh man, there are so many like avenues of expressing this theme in the mechanics missing. Like, what if there's this is it like Breath of Life or Breath of... I think it's the Breath of Life skill where you gain health when you death blow characters. I think that should have been the only healing mechanic in the game, because it's like the only way for you to get more life is to kill. I think that would have been so interesting. But,
that would have been... I agree, that definitely would have been interesting.
Might have
very
played
punishing, because the game's already... Yeah.
But Execution Grounds Key, I think it's like interesting, sure, but it definitely should have been cut. I think more world tendency mechanics is better.
Definitely, yeah.
Alright then. But I think like... I'm gonna move it a bit further to the right here, because it's not as cuttable as the gun. Obviously, the gun should have been cut long before the key. Okay, upgrade materials. I think we can...
Just gonna delete these ones, actually.
Yeah, I wonder if we can, we have Shard of Bronze and Shard of Steel. We can do that, like all these upgrade materials together, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can do them all together.
Because it's all basically the same. But we have Shard of Bronze, Shard of Steel, large Clearstone Shard, large Greystone Shard, and large Bladestone Shard.
There's also, like, large Shard of Bladestone, just slightly different wording.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We have some, like, icons left over from what these, like, materials would have been. But they're also kind of just, like... they're unassignable to what they're supposed to be. There's not really any text file entries to them. Generally, I'm glad they're cut. They're interesting, but probably shouldn't even be there.
Yeah, I think we talked a bit about this before we started recording, but you see in Dark Souls, you just have the one upgrade material, and that's so much better because generally speaking, I think the economy of these games is something they've never quite perfected, but Dark Souls is probably the closest to perfect because like humanity and souls and armors and weapons and stuff, it's all like everything feeds back into the souls economy. It's all like you can always buy the same materials using souls. Everything has a souls conversion rate. And with Demon Souls, it's already got so many different upgrade materials that are like this. I understand the appeal, but it's not big enough a game, I think, to justify that many different upgrade materials.
Yeah, there are text file entries of these, but they're not that interesting. That's just how I got the names from. Like, to the extent where the steel one it's literally named Shard of Steel _ Test 2. Oh. And its summary and description are just both weapon material test. So it's not that interesting.
Yeah.
Just test stuff before they removed it.
Alright. Next up we have the Unknown Spell. I didn't know about this.
Yeah, so... One second, actually, I gotta look at this. You guys part out. Speaking of which, just from like listening to this, I have no idea what's like staying in or what's being cut. I'm like, oh god.
Well, I think
I'm not sounding too awkward.
No, but most of this can stay in. This is a very laid back conversation video.
Okay, that works.
I'll probably have like some epic boss music in the background.
There's a tutorial on how to port Dark Souls 2 stuff to Paradise Edition. And it's like 40 minutes long the entire time and has this like menacing music in the background. It is.
I think
really
like
good.
I think with those sorts of videos, like I like the music always has to sort of match the energy, and most of the time, you can just get away with using the menu theme from these games, where it's like dun 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 dun. It's like that's enough. You don't need the epic music. It's fine.
I mean, like in all my videos, I just use whatever music from stuff games I have. Like I have a folder with just a bunch of different downloaded ones. I just drop in Premiere. Don't really think about it that much.
Which game do you think has the best soundtrack?
Well, I'm very keen to say Demon Souls.
Oh yeah.
I love Bloodborne. Bloodborne's soundtrack is really good.
I think Bloodborne has the most unique of the Miyazaki soundtracks. Maybe Bloodborne and Sekiro, because with past like Dark Souls, those games, and even Demon Souls to a certain extent, they kind of start to bleed together a bit.
There are some Demon Souls tracks which kind of just like sound like almost the same theme but a little different.
Yeah.
I do think that like there are some standalone tracks in Demon Souls definitely stick out. Like
oh yeah, like the old one I really like.
Yeah, Return to Slumber is my favorite song in the entire soundtrack.
Yeah,
it is incredible.
Kingsfield 4 also has a really banger soundtrack.
I should play the Kingsfield games.
They're interesting.
I've watched all your videos on them, but I haven't played them. I've ignored all the spoiler warnings at the start.
Most people do.
Right through.
See, like, just this is a little how the sausage is made. I don't actually like the videos. They are written for people who haven't watched them just as much as they are for people who have watched them. The spoiler warning is like, I'm drawing from these games, so to understand what's going to be said, it's best if you actually know what's going on. But like, that's not really true. I just put that there so people can't be angry at me in the videos for spoiling stuff.
I mean, that's definitely fair enough. I can't blame you for that. That works. It definitely. That's probably the best way to write them, honestly, because people are going to ignore them even if they've played the game or they haven't played the game before.
Yeah.
So it's probably just best to just go with it, see what you can do there.
Yeah.
I can't find this text entry because like I'm looking at the wiki right now, and I was like, oh, did I edit it out of my files and just replace something else?
Now the unknown spell is getting more and more interesting because we can't find any info on it.
No, I know it exists. I just can't find it. I know what it is. Because it's just like it has to do with the old summoning system, at least a little bit, like maybe a bit. If I can find it anywhere. Maybe it's in the test ones.
Oh, does it allow you to just like spawn another player in front of you, just like vomit one out of a portal?
Not exactly. That would have been really interesting if that was their original summoning idea, but as far as we can tell, no.
That would have been very Armored Core, where it's like you put yourself into the arena. It's kind of like Pokemon, actually, where you're like, yeah, I'll be somebody's like pocket monster.
The spell is basically like all we have is a single description, which we don't have an icon for it. There is an unused icon, but we can't exactly tie it to it.
Okay.
It just says change into black ghosts. It's not available to use when you are ghost, or at least it says ghost/NA, which kind of has to do with the old summoning system, which we can get into later if you'd like.
Yeah, sure.
It's tangentially aligned with it. It's interesting, but like
it should have been
how it it would work better for an older system, unless that text entry means that when you are summoned, you can change your character type to look like an invader. It wouldn't work anymore.
Ah. Alright. Ooh, assortment of icons. These are just like alternate icons for the HUD and stuff?
Yeah, there are a lot of leftover just icons sitting in the files.
Right. I think
if you're wondering if they say anything interesting, I've asked Loki, they really don't.
I think this is all in the realm of interesting.
Probably.
But should have been cut.
Oh yeah, I mean it's all early test stuff, so
yeah.
By just what it is, it's cut. Yeah.
So like put it right there with the should have been cut.
Right there.
Right there. Yeah, it's fine. Next up, we have enemies and NPCs, and this is where we get to like the meat of the things. So first, we have Serpent Soldiers.
Yeah, so Serpent Soldiers we can't exactly locate them to one map because they're everywhere. They're not actually like in every single test map you're going to find a Serpent Soldier in it. It's usually in the place of the character, like just the model they can see where they're at on the map. They are ID C1000, so they're just like the first thing there. 1001, actually, there's 1000, there's 1001, which is Serpent Soldier with a sword, and then Serpent Soldier with a bow and arrow.
Was this... So, wait a minute, is this just like very, very early build stuff, or is there any hints to... Or maybe this was an enemy meant for Shrine of Storms or something?
Well...
Because
okay,
I can't...
There's not really like anything for where they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
We do have text entries, like, well, not only text entries, but stuff in the Lua for the test tutorial maps, where it was like, so the very first, the tutorial, you walk through the like tunnel and you reach the little wide open area.
Yeah.
As soon as you would enter the like wide kind of open area, there is a region, and the region was, regions just check for, you can do all sorts of regions, but usually it's like when you walk into it or when you walk out of it or while you're in it. And it's just labeled falling snake soldiers. So they are actually like written into the tutorial, at least as their basic enemy. They're more in the second level than the first, because in the second level you have like the collapsing bricks from the ceiling where the triggers for them are both like in the actual Lua for it. It says,
this is still in the tutorial.
This is all in the tutorial.
Yeah. Okay.
The second level, there are regions for the like the ceiling collapsing above you.
Yeah.
And they can be turned on by both snake soldiers and the player. So
that's interesting.
Just a small thing.
I wonder, because a lot of the cut enemies are much more fantastical than the enemies we wound up getting. I think the most fantastical, like, basic enemies are all found in Latria, with like the man centipedes and stuff.
Yeah, probably.
Because we're usually just fighting like crazy men, human beings. But I don't know. I do. See, this is like teetering on the edge here, where I would have loved to be able to interact with these things. But at the same time, I'm like, Demon Souls, it's so like, it's kind of like Dune, where it's so human, right? The enemies aren't the machines that took over. It's like, it's people. It's not these weird monster goblins. It's just human beings.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable putting them in the interesting but should have been cut category.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's fair enough. They're more just early test models, if anything. They have some interesting animations, like they have one where they kind of like grab onto their face. I guess it's a snake.
Huh.
Their head, and they kind of like recoil backwards.
All right.
So that's about it.
All right. What's the story on the Wolf Warrior? Is this also like a test thing, or is this something?
So we don't really. It's one of the characters that we don't really have a lot of like placements for in the map. They're kind of just in the files. We don't really know why they're there. I haven't really found any references to them in the Lua scripts or anywhere else. They're kind of just there. So I have no idea.
Dang.
Same thing with the Hyena Warrior and the Owl Mage. Basically every single cut enemy. We don't really know where it's supposed to be. Unless they're like directly listed in a map, we have no idea.
I wonder...
I can make a few educated guesses, but I don't really know.
I wonder, because we have like Serpent Soldier, Wolf Warrior, like a lot of animal-based enemies. I do wonder if the idea of from Bloodborne, where mankind is in struggle with the beast within. I wonder if that's something they wanted to do here, but then they were like, nah, let's not do that, and then they did it in Bloodborne.
I mean, anything's possible.
It's possible, but maybe I'm stretching.
Yeah, maybe you're stretching. Anything's really possible when it comes to... We don't know as much as I would like to know.
Yeah, sadly. I hate how... Like, just imagine if Miyazaki came out of hiding and he was like, okay, so here's the stuff, like, let me just tell you all the stuff that we were planning to do. Right, so like, why hasn't he come out and been like, oh yeah, the Northern Limit, this is what we wanted to do?
I would love if he did that. I'd have so many ideas what to do then.
Yeah.
I need to like guess, I could just have it. What I would really love is if somehow I was able to get all of the... Just like, the concept art we have for Demon Souls, it's very lacking. I wish there was more. I wish I had more of it. That'd be really useful.
Yeah. I do love when Vadi did that contest where it was like, imagine the Northern Limit. I'm like, huh, that's so cool. So many interesting
ideas. Really
ideas.
Cool, like, that contest was really interesting. I'm not taking any ideas from that.
No.
Mod. Of course not. But it's definitely interesting to see more of a community, like, how they feel the level should have went, or, like, their general ideas of it. It's kind of... That's an issue we have to deal with when restoring the level, because people tend to have sort of a, like, already an idea of how the level should be and how it should have been and what's, like, already there based off of information we had, like, 6 years ago. And we learned a lot more since then, so we can't exactly point towards that and be like, oh, well, it's supposed to be this then, because entire themes of levels are completely different than what's guessed before. Like Loki, who you may or may not know him. I don't know. I think he's been on a few videos.
I've heard of Loki.
Yeah, they're just kind of around there somewhere.
I've done
they have an entire.
I've done like three videos with Loki, and they're all like 5 hours long.
I've watched them all. I know. Like their entire entry in the limit it's very interesting, but they kind of also base it off of like the second half of it for the second level. Part of their like sort of theory and what they're collecting from it have to do with an event which was misinterpreted, because they kind of went with an idea of, because around the level there are these lanterns, or what they're called internally, candlesticks in the files, in the Lua, and how they were looking at it is you'd have to kind of go around and light the candlesticks, and then you would light the final 2 at the top, and then you can walk through to the boss. But in actuality, you are breaking them. You go up and you would hit them until they break. There's actually like shadow lurkers around them, which are invisible, and there's shadows in the ground. I'll talk about it more when we actually reach that point, but...
That's very, that village in Elden Ring, where there's invisible assholes trying to kill you while you're lighting those torches.
Kind of. Except those are much faster than shadow lurkers.
Yeah. Bear Warrior and Owl Mage and Hyena Warrior. Do we want to put them all in the same arena, or do you have something to say about them?
I have nothing to say about them. They're all kind of just in the same, like, area. There's Test, the Hyena Warrior, I think Owl Mage. They all have test object files that are, like, in the 9000 series, so they're all test objects. There are 2 for the Hyena Warrior, where he's, like, scrounging on the ground and eating. And there's a different one for him as well, where they're, like, kind of just walking across, just some early test stuff. There's like that for characters that are used. There's a Mind Flare one where they kind of just stand there, raise the bell, ring it, then put their hand back down, and that's the whole animation. So they're in a couple places there, but there's nothing actually like for the game itself.
Oh. Okay. Wounded Wolf.
So this is just kind of it's a wolf with an arrow that's been shot into it. It's kind of just another dog enemy. It fits sort of in the limit. There's no actual like data for it being there, but it's just another kind of character that we may have seen at some point.
Is it what color is it? Is it white? Gray?
It is kind of a grayish white, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Demon Souls doesn't have any like dog enemies, does it? Oh yeah, it does. Stonefang.
It does, yeah. There's an Stonefang and Boletaria.
Oh yeah.
Because there's the third level. They're in the hearts.
Yeah.
And outside of it.
I don't know. I feel like the interesting but should have been cut segment is getting pretty bloated. But like the thing is that Demon Souls is probably the most tightly directed of any of their games. Probably with the like maybe Sekiro, but I think Sekiro is so different that there are so few things here we have listed, like the gun, which you can add to Demon Souls without being like, does this add something to it, or are we subtracting, right? Is Demon Souls a lesser game with the Hyena Warrior?
Yeah, I get that. Like, I think there's only a few things, as you're saying, that actually would really fit in well. Like, the torch would fit in pretty well, honestly. I could see walking through Stonefang tunnels, having to raise a torch to, like, see the miners.
Yeah.
But a lot of things just don't really work that well.
Yeah, sadly. I also think the torch would be fun in the Valley of Defilement, just like to burn away the impurities. But we have here something called Shadowbird.
So it's interesting. It's a very weird model. It's supposed to be flying around you and like swooping down, attacking you, but it's not correctly made. Every time loading the map, they're actually just gliding on the floor, so it doesn't really look that right. But it fits in theme well with Shrine of Storms, at least of how like what was there previously. Although I do prefer the
The
like,
manta rays?
the double-winged hawks more.
Oh,
the manta rays are cool, but the hawks are for actual birds. I like the hawks.
Yeah. Okay. Again, interesting, but I can see why this was cut. I've played Elden Ring. I've fought with those jackass birds. I can see what they were thinking.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. They decided to cut it. I don't know.
Yeah. All right then. We have the Filthy one.
So the Filthy one is an NPC, which is in both Northern Limit maps actually.
Oh.
They are a woman that is kind of ornately dressed, but is covered in like just different bugs and filth.
Oh, she's the pink woman.
Yes, yeah, she has the like staff, the snake on the end of it.
Yeah, she looks a bit like Maria from Bloodborne. She has like the same hat and the same like pale face.
Yeah, it's like the same kind of hat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
She is the most complete cut NPC we have.
Oh.
She is the only one that when they die, she has a ragdoll.
Ooh.
When she gets hit, she laughs at you, so it's kind of similar to Geraldo from Executioner Grounds. Most of her attacks, like, I think all of them actually. I have to look further at them. But they kind of just like point their staff at you and the snake attacks, which is just a little funny.
All right. I'm going to put that in the. I think basically all of the Northern Limit stuff should have stayed. I wish that had stayed. So I think she's like as a part of the Northern Limit. Like, I don't think she individually is more interesting than something like the Torch, because the Torch has like more interesting is should have stayed more than the Torch, because that has more utilities in more places. But as a part of the Northern Limit, I think that's a really interesting character.
It's an interesting design. I don't know what they were going to do with it, but it's an interesting one.
It's also very Valley of Defilement, which is not really the mood I get from the Northern Limit. So because
it's a bit weird.
yeah, it's like it doesn't quite fit in. So I'm like, what were they planning? Which I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll find out in a bit. The Unknown Man.
So this guy's entirely named just Merchant, if I remember correctly. He kind of just he's a perfect design because he has one animation. They made him once. They made one animation. Decided they could stop there. He has absolutely nothing to him. He just kind of stands there. His clothes it's very weird. It's like he's also in the Northern maps. He's in the first and second one as well, but he's kind of just like standing there. He has a monocle. He's well dressed, but that's all I really know about him.
Is he in the Northern Limit? Like, was that where he was supposed to be, or is this like a character they would have maybe put in all of their maps and then just removed from the other maps? Like, put him in there for testing, then remove them when you put in the final level, and they just never got to that point in the Northern Limit. So
that's a great question, actually, because that's the same kind of feeling I have with the Filthy one as well.
Yeah.
And this Merchant. There's also another one that will reach pretty soon, which I will explain more why I think they're just a test model, if anything.
Okay.
Because they're kind of just like... They feel like they were NPCs that were going to be replaced by the C000 like player-type enemies, NPCs.
Okay.
Because they're kind of just like there, if anything. They don't have anything of substance to them. Filthy one's interesting because they actually have a name in the files, but everything else about them is the same way of the Merchant. It's just kind of nothing.
Are these characters which are like maybe from a pre-Miyazaki build of the game, and then when he sets down and they're like, okay, here's how we're going to produce the game, here are all the assets we have, let's test with these assets, and then replace them?
I mean, that's certainly possible. I think the two NPCs you can talk about too far are definitely they could be from a like pre-Miyazaki era of the game, but the one we're going to go over in a bit, I think that one is a little more recent, if anything.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to put this on the uninteresting should have been cut. Like the exact opposite of the Filthy one. because if this is just like from a disastrous build of the game and it didn't actually have anything going on for it, then yeah, I think like these are interchangeable. But as they become more relevant, I think they become more interesting. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just moved. I moved the character to help out.
Oh yeah.
They brought up that character. I just moved them up there because I might as well talk about him now.
All right. So this is NPC.
Yeah. So
7050.
Yeah. So this character I like to call the C000 test character because they have kind of a little more rough animations. They share some more unique animations. Like when you first enter the Nexus, you have the one of the worshippers, and when you talk to him, he kind of like moves his hand first time you talk to him, and then he goes back to standing the normal, like default.
Yeah.
Initial animation he does. And this guy has an animation. He has like basically a lot of the unique animations that characters do. So it's more like he was just thrown in, and then eventually he'd be replaced. Because along with that, he also is like for testing how the armor looks on characters. There are a lot of files of him wearing different armor sets that are just like in the test entries. So it kind of feels that's my interpretation of it at least.
Is this the NPC who is all of the other NPCs on the loading screens?
Not entirely, no.
Oh, okay.
That guy is slightly different.
Because I remember
he's used in like object files and stuff like that.
Yeah. I remember when that was first brought up and I was like, oh crap, I've been watching these loading screens for like hours probably, and it never clicked that they were the same character, just wearing different stuff. Right, I think this guy is interesting.
He's interesting, but he has nowhere to really like go, if anything.
No.
He's just like... He's in more than Northern Limit. He is in Northern Limit 1 and 2, but he's also in the Test Shrine of Storm maps. He is in, funnily enough, Stonefang 2, which is M601. He is just standing there, like, out of bounds.
Huh.
As a dummy model, but he's just there, so...
No.
I don't know what to think of it.
So it's possible that this is just like... he's there for testing stuff with... so that you just have something in some character or something in the map to test with, in case we want to use like NPCs here, so we know what those NPCs do or something.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think of it, at least.
All right. In that case, I think it's like interesting, but very much should have been cut. But like,
yeah, definitely, because it's just a test thing. So
yeah,
it's weird to be like, oh, well, it should have been cut because it's just for testing.
Yeah. But like, if this had just been like, oh, this is a character they cut. Like, this is why the Filthy one is here, because I have like this idea of, like, if this was a character who had like a fleshed out story, then yeah, give me that. I think Demon Souls, like when you move on from Demon Souls to Dark Souls, it's like that world is so much richer because there are so many more characters. Partly.
Kind of.
Even though I think Demon Souls' world is more realized internally. Filthy Woman's Child.
So, the name already kind of says what it is. It's just kind of a like frail child in models. They have a bucket in front of them. It's a very nice bucket.
So this is the woman who demands that you buy something for her child's health or something in Valley of Defilement.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
He has no animations. He's just T-posing. That's all we have of him.
This is another example of Gascoigne's daughter. This is another example of Ocelot. This is an example of what these FromSoft games keep doing, where they introduce a child, and then they cut the child for the final release, because they don't want you to kill children, probably.
Maybe.
Yeah, because like, the only kid I can really remember in any of these games is Kuro, and Kuro, you can't even try to strike a sword at him. But I don't know. I don't know if it's like Japanese publishing standards. Maybe it's Sony. Maybe FromSoft themselves are like, nah, let's not do that. Because like, they model them. Like, Ocelot is there. There's a full model for Ocelot. There's a sequence in Bloodborne where the wet nurse swoops down and starts eating Murgo from the little baby wagon thingy. And I was like, I think Murgo is still invisible in that cutscene, but it's like they keep doing these horrific things to children and then they cut them. I don't know. I feel like they're right to cut them though.
I feel like with this particular character, it's probably best that they did. I think it adds more of
Is she crazy kind of?
Yeah, is she just lying to you to try to get souls so she can live? Is she telling the truth that she has a child? There's no child I found so far. Yeah. Is the child dead? What's happening here? It's just a lot of good questions. It's more interesting without this character being in the game.
Yeah. There's more ambiguity.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So yeah. Interesting, but should have been cut. The crocodile. Oh yes.
Yeah, there are actually 2 different crocodile characters. There are C1040 and C9501.
Let's. I think we can put them both together.
They're not different. They're the same model.
Yeah,
they're the same model. They're just in there twice. The second one's actually after the Kingsfield 4 Ice Golem is C9500, and the alligator is C9501.
Oh!
I don't know why they're after each other, but they are. So they have no animations. It's kind of just an alligator. There are some objects in the tutorial of a hanging. Well, I would say it's a crocodile, not an alligator. Where is it? There are object files for hanging crocodiles that are kind of just There's several versions of them. There's one of them actually listed in Baltaria, but it's unused as well. They're all it's just a crocodile.
Just a crocodile.
I don't know if they're going to do a tutorial. The way I like to think that in the first level, where you kind of have the little lower section with water in the tutorial, that maybe you could walk through there in a crocodile by your ankles or something.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's kind of just there. It's good.
Okay. I wonder. I'm thinking. Demon's Souls doesn't really, aside from that, Demon's Souls doesn't really have any sewer areas, which I think this would be a natural fit for.
Not really. It doesn't really have a lot of sewer areas, yeah.
And nor does it, there's one beach at the end of the game, but you wouldn't put enemies on there.
Well, actually,
Oh!
you... well, actually, so, I didn't list this. I mean, get to this later. But there is... The way that the original Chulon fight was going to go is very weird.
Oh.
Because there are a lot of dummied out models of the slug on the beach and going up towards you. Some are floating in the air. There is a object file of the slugs floating in the air, and then they kind of shake a little bit and they fall down. So we don't. I'd love to restore it one day, but I don't really know how the event works that well.
And this is are these the slugs in the Valley of Defilement then? Were they
These are the kind of yeah, where they kind of just fall down on you.
Yeah.
But
that's weird.
I think it's supposed to be more part of the boss fight. It is very weird. Yes, I'm not fully sure what to think of it.
I wonder if it's kind of like the phantasms of Kos in Bloodborne, where human beings have vermin within them. It's just little parasites that are grown from them, and then the great ones have phantasms, and it's the same thing, but they're kind of more evolved, where the old one, because it's so powerful, it just has these parasites on it. I don't know.
Maybe they're that's very weird. I'm actually looking at the lore right now. It's gimmick related. There is a thing called Demon ID list, which is sometimes used for maps. It's used for larger events that have a lot of different characters. And these true Kinalot slugs are all put in them. I don't really know what they were going to do with it. All I can really find right now is just making them visible or invisible. I haven't actually found anything important with them, but if I do find anything, I'll probably make a post about it somewhere.
Okay. I'm gonna put crocodile into the bloated section of interesting, but See, I'm actually saying, like, I don't know. I feel like because there's the next entry is deer, and I'm like, I could see a Demon Souls where like you just have one section that you're just kind of going through a babbling brook, and there's just like passive animals there, and that's pretty okay.
Yeah, especially with like the when you start the game, you have all the like different concept art they show, and there's the like kind of forested area and the wizard, and there's the like deer next to him.
Yeah,
I think more animals will fit.
I think that forested area is Latria. I think the tower in the background, like those pillars, look very similar to what we have in Latria. And like he's like a wizard, so it's like Latria, that's a land of wizards, so it's like kind of Latria before the fall, I guess.
It's kind of an interesting idea, yeah.
I'm also gonna put a Lant Slugfest. And I'm gonna put that in the interesting. Very interesting, but in the should have probably been like it's probably better that it works the way it does now.
I kind of like more of the like
Understated.
Oh, this is what has become of King Alon more than just they could have done it. It would have been really cool, but it's probably better off they didn't.
Yeah, I love a final boss that's kind of pathetic. Like Quinn wasn't supposed to be pathetic. He was supposed to be like a good fight apparently. But I love that he comes out as really pathetic in the end of Dark Souls.
It's good, yeah.
Narrative heft and such. Miss me with this Elden Beast shit, that's what I'm saying. And yeah, deer. I think we could put the deer right next to the crocodile, where I could imagine a little fun section where you just have deer.
I mean, probably, yeah. I could see it. I mean, that would work really well.
Ooh, rat. Large.
I put large after because there are rats in the game. There's the tiny little rats in Valley of Defilement that give you plague. But there's also a rat enemy, which is more like the rats from Dark Souls.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of looks like the same model, these are smaller ones, but just a larger.
Scaled up?
Just scaled up. It doesn't actually, like... It has a lot of interesting animations. Like, most of them are kind of just running on the ground and, like, jumping at you, but that's... It's a rat. What can you do with it?
Yeah.
It has a very funny stagger animation where it like gets launched away from you and then like just gets back up. It kind of like flails over.
Oh yeah. I feel like Demon Souls could have done with some rats or some other like carrion eaters, maybe in Volitaria or somewhere.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, it does have some actually really interesting attack animations because the first three are all just like normal bites, but the fourth one, it just like jumps really high in the air and like bites and then jumps back. It kind of like pounces at you and then jumps away.
Huh.
It's just interesting little cut stuff for an already cut character.
Yeah. Tutorial Dragon God.
Okay, it's going to be a long one, so hope you're excited for that. So I spent a long time working with this civic character. They are C1020. It is an alternate version of Dragon God that has an entire different, not different set, but like it's similar, but it's more constructed for that arena, and it has some unused stuff that's not actually shown in the normal fight. So you know the tutorial, you know the end of it where you can see the ballista like on the left and right, and then Dragon God stand there ready to punch you.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, he had animation. So both his arms are like on the walls of the sort of opening mountains kind of cave thing, and it's from what we have from it. We have a few events that we can get general ideas from. There is an event where when you're first walking, like when you first enter the area, he would sort of move his head up and like look through the little cracks and then like see you. So you know like, oh, there's this giant dragon, it's going to try to kill me now. But most of this fight, it's almost more like the Dark Souls 2 Old Iron King fight, where they have really slow attacks and then their hand kind of just like stays there for a moment and you get to attack then.
Oh.
The ballista in the room are interactable, which I actually restored that and got that working.
Oh yeah.
Where you can shoot him in the arm and he like recoils, grabs onto his arm, and he gets really pissed. and there's like an event in the Lua called like Proxy Get Boss Arm, I think it's called. But it's all kind of relating to dealing damage to him. He has animations where he like kind of slouches down and his head's like on the level where you can hit him. It's all very interesting, but it's also all in a state where I'm trying to restore it, but what we have left there is all very some of the stuff they use in the Lua just doesn't exist anymore, as far as I can tell. Which kind of sucks.
Is this because the menu cinematic has the dragon god appearing on a castle? Is this what that originally was, and then they put him in there, like in a little cave?
It's an interesting idea. Actually, I want to watch the intro again. 1 second. You got me thinking about it more, and like near the end of it, when he does yell, it's a very similar kind of like thing, but not exactly.
All right.
Actually, Dragon God in that introduction is huge. That is entirely he's like 3 times the size he normally is. Never noticed that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, but it's sort of like that. I don't know why Dragon God's in the tutorial. I feel like there's been a lot of like general speculation ideas around it, but it's like maybe at some point, like when the game was first being made, tutorial, it was just kind of go for as long as you could before you died, and you'd reset and you go again. So it's kind of just like a scrap boss fight that we never got to play through.
Yeah. I don't think there is, like in the game as it currently exists, I don't think there is like a good explanation for why you fight Dragon God there. Because it's like, it's a different Dragon God than the Dragon God in Stonefang. So, it's like it's just a thing that exists there, and don't ask too many questions.
It's kind of just there, and don't think about it too much.
So yeah, like, but at the same time, I'm like, I would have appreciated being able to kill him in the tutorial, and then just like, maybe when he dies, he collapses on top of you to kill you instead.
That would be
instead of
a very funny way, but I like the idea a lot, actually. Still get just to the Nexus, because like, it's kind of the whole like, oh, Monumental's like sending you to die by going through the end of that, but like, it's a really fun idea. Or even if you do win, you get crushed. That'll be very unsatisfactory, but I kind of like that more.
Yeah, I do like Dragon God. He's a lot more like a Shadow of the Colossus boss, where it's not so much about dealing damage, it's more about you need to manipulate the enemy into behaving differently to open up more of the arena. In Shadow of the Colossus, the arena is the boss themselves, but here it's like the walkways. I wish they would do more of that with their bosses.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
I would not mind that.
Alright, so the next thing we have here is the crow.
So, there are crow objects in the map already. There are like crows in Voltaria. There's crows basically every single map where you just walk up to them and they fly away. But there is a character model of a crow. It uses the same model. It has no animations. But it's a very nice bird. Gets plenty of treats.
Alright, I mean...
It's just a crow.
I could have done with a crow.
I mean, there's no like upside or really downside to it. Objects probably works better for loading map-wise, but it also has the advantage of maybe at some point, if it was like an actual character model, you could shoot it and it would actually die and not like just fly away or be invincible. Yeah. Like that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Alright then, we have the alternate penetrator.
So this technically isn't a character, I just included it in it because it is a version of the penetrator that's slightly different.
Is this the wings?
This is the wings, yes.
Alright.
So it's just this like large pair of translucent wings behind the penetrator.
Is it like how King Alant has wings?
Not entirely. It's very similar to King Alant's because they're kind of like the same kind of idea, but it's not like a wing of... It's not like a souls. It is just literal like wings coming out of his armor that are like... You ever play Terraria?
No, sadly.
It's kind of like that. No, it's kind of... Well, they have like wings in that game. It's kind of like... They're kind of just there. I thought they're supposed to be translucent, but they're kind of just... They're like slightly see-through.
Oh, I see. So it's not like...
But without any...
It's not like, oh, this is what the soul wings would have looked like in an early stage. These are completed wings that are just a bit translucent.
Mm-hmm. And without any like actual animations for him.
Yeah.
It looks very odd, but maybe in his actual stuff he could have done more.
Yeah.
There actually is some cut penetrator stuff. It's very like... It's small things like different attack animations, which... I struggle with saying just cut because maybe some way you could force some to the animations from a boss fight, but I haven't been able to, and I've tried a lot. But you know what, Penetrator has like the one attack where he actually uses the sword to penetrate the opponent.
Yeah.
He has a lot of different attacks where it's more reliant on using that type of like poke more than just slashing with it.
Do you think there was a part, was there maybe a part where he's kind of like the Crucibles in Elden Ring, where he flies up and then he just like flies down to you with like the sword, kind of like a lance?
I mean, that'd be really cool. There's no animations for it, but if that did exist, that'd be really interesting.
I wonder if the, are the wings, are these like angel wings?
I guess it can be interpreted as that, but I don't think they're expressly meant to be angel wings.
Okay.
I'll of course send some footage of it.
Alright. Alternate penetrator. Penetrator's wings. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is very much like I don't think this would have changed that much if it's just a visual thing, but I do think maybe if this could have afforded him a bigger moveset, that might have been okay.
I think if it were just it's hard to tell what it would look like in game, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Alright. Next up, old one, diffused one. What does it mean for him to be diffused?
So, diffused is just what they call them in the files.
Oh.
It is just the normal old one like model they use, but they, for some reason, has a texture of a old version of the old hero on it. Like a kind of, there's a different model for the old hero.
Yeah.
And it uses that one's textures, but it's just really awkwardly wrapped across the entirety of the old one. So it looks very weird. It's just called Diffused One. It's basically just another test model. I have no idea.
Okay. Is that maybe a case of, let's see what a random texture looks wrapped on this, so we know, like, when we build the final texture, we know kind of what we want it to, like, we know where to draw stuff on, or...
Maybe. It kind of looks more like one of the devs just having fun.
No.
Just kind of put some stuff there. I don't know.
It's also possible.
It's just kind of there.
I think we could safely say that, yeah, this should have not happened.
Yeah, we can. That's probably a good thing to say.
Maybe that's an unlockable ending.
Maybe.
Old Monk.
No one's found it yet.
Boss fight. I don't know if I've heard about this.
So, 6030 is the original Old Monk. Not original as in the old one, it is just the normal Old Monk. It has a bunch of animations, but they're all of them just sitting there breathing. It's the exact same animation, so it's just completely cut. But 6031 is a version of the Old Monk with no textures. The robe is off him, and he is standing there, kind of menacingly. He casts spells, he can jump around, he's actually very athletic. It's just like another alternate version of what would become of the fight. Like before they had a summoning system, you'd actually fight him. Okay.
Interesting, but I think the fight we got was better.
Oh yeah, I definitely love the fight we got more. There's also the 6032 is like the Old Monk robe. It has a single animation where it's like flying at you, kind of.
Oh.
So that could add interesting stuff. I don't know what they're gonna do with it originally, but it's there.
What if we just had a fight against the rope itself, and it's just like a long yellow fabric that just flows around the arena like a giant flying serpent and swoops in at you from time to time?
That sounds really difficult to fight, but really cool.
It sounds really difficult to design too.
Yes, it does.
Are you gonna design it?
And am I gonna do it? I mean, if I get bored enough and I want to just write Lua stuff, I can, I guess. No promises.
You have here listed flying yellow robe. Did I accidentally spoil something?
No, that was the thing I added to it.
Okay.
That was just a little. That was the thing to add it on to it.
All right. Test Proletarian Soldier.
Yeah, so that's just one of the early test models. It is the basic Proletarian knight soldier. They kind of just it's the animations are a little more unfinished. His textures are unclean. They're a little it's like they have the incorrect materials assigned to them because he's very glossy. His weapon textures and shield textures don't align correctly. It's just an early test version of what they had that was, I don't know if it's actually used any maps, but it has some very slow animations. It's not bad though. It's kind of like a relic of possibly they had first person mode because it's kind of missing a lot of the, or maybe when Miyazaki took over and started going back to normal stuff, because it's very slow paced.
Okay, I think. Oh, I was gonna say that's not an interesting fight because it's just like a test fight from a enemy we got, but no, that it still has lingering first person mode stuff in it. That's actually kind of interesting.
Well, it doesn't really have lingering first person mode stuff in it. I'm thinking that just from looking at it, it almost looks more fit to fight from first person compared to moving around at a faster pace like it would in game.
All right. Okay. We also have the Test Blue and Red Eye Knights.
So these ones are just a very it's the same thing, but it's the same thing as a soldier, where it is a model which is very incomplete, very glossy. It doesn't really fit in that well. But judging by the C0100, it's one of the really early models in the game. The params are not turning off display groups, so they have weapons in each hand, and their shields are awkwardly aligned, but it shows a general idea of what models they wanted to make later down the line. There's also, I didn't write it down on there, but C0200, which is a early test version of the Proletarian Assassin.
Oh yeah.
It is basically the same design. They didn't really change much about him. But again, slightly worse model, slightly worse textures.
Okay. Depraved one with Rusty Nail.
So, this one is very weird, because it's definitely not used. It's a very sort of test version of them.
Okay.
Their animations are very, almost zombie-like, but they're... I don't know, they're very weird, because some of their animations have them holding a rusty nail to attack with, and other animations have a nail impaled through their head.
Ooh.
But they're still, attacking.
The depraved ones, these are the enemies from the valley, right?
Yes.
Ah, man, I see. I think that could have been cool if they had a rusty nail weapon.
I think they do in the final build.
Oh, they
have
do?
something very similar to it, at least. Yeah. This one, actually, I don't know if this animation is used, but it's a very this specific enemy. It's a very fun animation. It is 6 seconds long, and it's when you catch them on fire and they die to it. And they literally they stop, drop, and roll, and they do that they roll twice. It's like they were just having fun while capturing stuff with mocap.
Yeah.
It's really good though.
Alright, well, I think more enemy variety I don't think would have hurt.
Probably not, yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be an early test version of them, but they fully have what they wanted to do with them.
Kingsfield 4 Ice Golem.
So, he has no animations. He has a single bone in his skeleton. It is named Bone.
Huh.
He is just standing there in his default pose. Not a T-pose, he just kind of stands there. And that's it.
This is just some lingering thing in the code, or
some lingering model. It is model C9500, so it's a test model.
Yeah.
And he's kind of just standing there. I don't really know a lot about Kingsfield, but He's just there.
He's just there. He's in the best level, I think, of Kingsfield 4. The one which is first it's an ice level, then you turn on the engine and it becomes a lava level.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool.
But he's just kind of there. Like most things in this game.
Crocodile again. They tried twice. I mean, it's Crocodile again.
Yep, he's just kind of there.
C970 and C9707.
So through those are all. I crashed my game. Those are all just like general test models of a character in different armor sets. Just like a general idea of when they were getting armor into the game, and they maybe at a stage before they started using C000 for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They were just porting models in to see how they'd work and how they'd look.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of just there.
Okay. I don't think that's that interesting.
No, it's from my perspective. I think it's interesting that they even did that. But
true.
From a more like literal perspective, it is just not that interesting. The one interesting thing though is that the player character we talked about earlier, the NPC 7050.
Yeah.
That is the model we use for the knight in all the armor sets. Is his model, and included in it is the leather armor set he wears. So it's kind of like it. For me, it feels like they had this test model and they just threw a sword and shield on when that's an NPC now.
Okay. Next up, we have Ghost Warrior Sword and Shield. That's C998080.
Yeah, so I don't really. They're kind of just this translucent green ghost. I can't get it to fully work with the correct textures, so it's using the basic like white phantom. So like when you are another player, another world, it has no animations. It doesn't. I gave it the C000 animations, so it doesn't actually work that well because it has those skeletons for its cape.
Okay.
But it's kind of just like a warrior. Not really a warrior. I don't really know. Think about it. They have no legs in one of them at least, or at least maybe it's supposed to be fading out to having no legs, but it just looks a bit weird.
All right. Is this the same story with the C9982, the Ghost Warrior with a bow and arrow?
Yeah, it's the exact same thing except a slight armored weapon difference. That's about it. I don't know where they're originally going to be used. I really like the design. I think it's interesting, but from what we have from them, it's just kind of a character that was there at some point.
All right. I mean, I think that's I think that's interesting, but I would need to. I would want to know how it operated in the world before I really committed to have wanted it to stay.
Yeah, exactly. We don't really know like how it was really supposed to be or how it looked, so it's kind of just there, and we don't really know.
All right. C999, old player character.
So I listed him as old player character. He doesn't have an official name. The reason why I wrote him as old player character is because he shares the exact same skeleton as we do. So C000, it's the exact same skeleton.
Okay.
Now this is actually found by Gravity. It's one of the members on the restoration project. Not the character, but the skeleton thing. And it's that the specific model, like, technically, we're using his skeleton.
Oh.
So that's what makes you think that this is like a kind of older test version of when we had first-person mode. Because he has these two bags, like, on his back.
Mm-hmm.
And the player character doesn't have those normally in the armor sets, really. Like, they're there, but they're more part of the armor. But for it's in the skeleton for C000, and C999 has those bags on his back.
Okay.
He has a very kind of basic heroic fantasy sword with a like triangular pommel. He has a basic like soldier shield, but he has this like I don't know about really like fancy, but I really like it. It's just a great sword. On his back, he's covered in weapons. He has he has 2 belts on, and the thing's strapped around his like chest with a skull on it. So he's very cool.
Okay, I'm gonna say, like, because we have his skeleton, because this feels like something that's very grandfathered into the game. This is like peak should have stayed, because it kind of did stay, right?
It kind of, in a way, it did stay, although the like mechanics of what this character would have been did not.
Yeah.
Would have been cool to have him though. At least like a character with this model, since it's just using the same thing. Like having them in the world would still be cool.
Oh yeah.
Although their armor set, with how like grounded it is in Demon Souls, their armor doesn't really like fit, I guess, in a way. It's hard to describe, but it's a very... I like it a lot, but I can see why they may not want to use it.
I get that. And next up we have C9998. This is old player character arms. I'm assuming this is something from first person?
Yeah, it's a pair of a sword and a shield, and that is the whole thing. It is just his arms, and he's holding his sword and shield, and that's it.
I'm gonna put that on the opposite side of the should have stayed scale. I think Demon Souls really benefits from the third person. But it is very interesting that it used to be like a first person game too.
Yeah, like a response to Oblivion.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah, I love Sony's idea there, where they're like, Microsoft has this really popular game. We'll make our own popular game, and then they get Demon Souls, and they're like, what the hell is this? No, we're not gonna pick up the distribution rights, and we're also not gonna invest in Dark Souls. And now, From Software is like the most beloved studio in the world. It's like, Sony, you dumbasses.
Worst mistake.
Yeah, it's like, first, you created this. You literally created this because you wanted to compete with Oblivion. And you could have, like, this FromSoft could have been your Bethesda, but you didn't. You didn't invest in a good thing because you just wanted Oblivion again.
Their mistake.
Oh yeah. Test objects. We're sort of out of the test characters now.
The characters actually should move the NPCs above test objects. I think that makes more sense going from it compared to. Actually, I'm gonna do the same with animations, and we'll go to mechanics after test objects.
All right. So just to conclude on the NPCs, then we have probably my favorite cut Demon Souls character. One of my favorite Demon Souls cut things in Tell-All.
So Tell-All, who has been restored by George.
Oh yeah.
Which is really cool.
Very, very Kingsfieldy. Just a character who's like, you want to know the lore? You want to know what's happening? I'll tell you.
It is very Kingsfieldy. That's for sure. Definitely a very good. It's cool, but it's definitely a good thing they were cut.
Oh, you think so?
Well, I feel like it kind of ruins it a bit for lore-wise. If you have a character where it's like, oh, pay me a few souls and I'll explain what's happening or like what's going on right now. I like the idea of a character that's like that, but not one that's so like grounded in I know everything. Maybe like source which thinks they know stuff, but like maybe they're wrong about a few things. So
more like a Gideon Ofnir, who's like, I can tell you about the world, but I can't tell you everything.
Exactly, yeah. If they were more like, I can tell you all about the world, but they have their own like sort of narrative they want to push.
Yeah.
Like if they're trying to make you, like, do the quote unquote bad ending, then maybe they could try to convince you more of like how that's the better thing to do, and how even though there's demons around, soul arts are more like it's better to have that.
Yeah. You know, Tell-All would probably be a great character if you had like a Koth to her Frampt, where you have like Tell None. And like Tell None tells you like the same story basically, but from the perspective of, and the demons are the good guys. And you're like, oh, who can I actually trust here?
Tell None.
Tell None.
That's a great idea.
Thank you.
I like that idea.
You send the residuals to
like I'm gonna make any money from this mod.
I think Tell None would would revolutionize Demon Souls modding.
We would do something. We can't even make custom NPCs yet. That'd be like, if I wanted to do that, I would have to write it all like in the Lua of the map and not with the actual character. It wouldn't work.
You can't copy tell-all? You don't have access to the code that deep?
Well, so they use a certain file type that we can't edit yet. So we can't exactly do anything with it.
You could write a script extender to manipulate it. You could spend 5 years trying to get that to work for Telnon.
Like I even know how to do that.
I think I think that was a big problem with was it Skyrim modding for a while? Is that to change like core functions of the world, people had to write script extenders, and because they couldn't access like the sort of black box of the game's engine, they just had to sort of trial and error their way through with script extenders. And if something happened, something worked, then they kind of got an idea for, okay, since this worked, that means that in the black box, this code must be there. Like it must have this function somehow. And they sort of retroactively sort of recreated a sort of understanding of, it may not have been Skyrim, but I think it was Skyrim. They sort of recreated by trial and error the code.
That sounds horrible.
It sounds like the worst possible thing you could possibly do, because first of all, there's no guarantee. Like, yeah, every experiment tells you something, but this is like 10 years of your life on something that, like, oh my god, I could. Tell-all. I think this character could have stayed. I think a different version of this character could have stayed.
They could have. I feel like in its current state, it's like a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the custom. So NPCs have a thing called a ESD that has like all the different states of they're angry at the player, if they're just standing there waiting. We can't edit those currently. If we could, I'd love to make custom species.
Oh yeah.
See, I don't really know how to do that. That's why it's very lucky that Shadowwith is on the team. Because they've been doing a lot of stuff, and I'm incredibly thankful.
Do we have custom NPCs in post-Demon Souls modding? Like Dark Souls or Elden Ring?
Dark Souls 1 we do, Dark Souls 3 we do.
Okay.
Certain it's probably possible in Elden Ring right now.
Alright. It's amazing to me how quickly they got the randomizer mod running for Elden Ring.
It's fun too, it's great.
Yeah, it's like, okay, let's walk around this castle. Oh, it's the fire giant.
That's fun. It is really cool though. Randomizer especially. One day we'll make Demon Souls as soon as people start modding it more. Which, you know, I can't really blame people for not wanting to mod the game as much, because it is a PS3 game.
Yeah.
And it is a pain sometimes. But I'm here doing it, so
it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
In a way, yeah.
What's the story with the hanging woman?
So it's just some like cut dialogue of like it's interpreted to be Thomas's daughter. They're mainly just discussing the pain that they're in, and then they beg you to basically cut them down and kill them, and they say thank you, and they die.
Is this a woman or is this a child?
It's. I mean, we don't have a model, but it sounds older, so I guess a woman.
Okay. Because I'm thinking, again, we have like another cut kid and Thomas's daughter.
Yeah. I don't know. There's not. All we have is talk. We have the dialogue of it. It's somewhere online. I actually don't. I don't know where it's at right now.
Where do you stand on the hanging woman? Do you think? See, I feel like if she had been there talking to you, like, yes, I can see how that sort of adds to the bleakness, but at the same time, I do like that when you cut them down for the loot, and then you pick up the hairpin, it's like there's kind of like a revelation of just what exactly you did.
Yeah, I like it more without him.
Yeah.
I think it's like better to have found this thing and go, oh well, what is this thing? It's interesting, and going back talking to Thomas, and he recognizes it, and he kind of like the voice acting really does a good job on it. Yeah. People like to point towards the like. Obviously, some people be like, oh, the Demon Souls voice acting. It's very like compared to other FromSoft games, it's definitely like a little below it, but I love it. There's definitely some translation issues.
It's a massive.
You've talked to Loki, you know it.
Yeah. It's a massive step up from like even just Kingsfield 4. Like, I implore people to listen to Kingsfield voice acting, like the narration at the beginning, where it's like, first of all, the narrator is being completely drowned out by the background music. You can't hear half the stuff he's saying. And they released it like that, so sure. But it's also like he's doing a voice where it's like, and then you were to go into the dark mines of Malubia. And in Malubia you would find the ship. And it's like, why are you talking like this? Just compare that to the Monumental telling the story of Boletaria in Demon Souls world. It's like, wow, this is so much better. Yeah, I think Hanging Woman is interesting, but I do like that. I do like the more ambiguous touch.
It's definitely for the better that they ended up keeping it.
Oh, here we have something that I really like, which is the man-eater tail attacking itself.
Attacking itself.
Because it's a serpent.
Yeah, it's very parasitic. It's how it's gonna work in the fight, I don't really know, honestly. But it's actually, I gotta pull up the animation. I am unprepared.
Is this a case of can we cut the tail off the man-eater regularly?
You can, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if this is then a case of you can do that to get rid of the serpent, but you can also like not do that and try to manipulate the man-eater into attacking itself. I don't know.
I don't know either, because
like if you
it's a grounded animation, so it's on the ground. It's not flying.
Yeah, like if you were maybe like, I don't know, if you poisoned it or if you managed to afflict some status ailment to it, then the serpent would look at it rather than looking at you. I don't know. I feel like this is a mechanic or like an animation which, if they could have gotten this working, it would have made the fight much more interesting. Because you could, like, if you could manipulate the enemies like that, especially since you have two of them, it just gives you a bit more to do in the fight. And it goes back to what I was talking about with the Dragon God, where I really like when, rather than just rolling around, you're actually interacting with the boss in interesting ways. So I would have loved to see this stay.
That would have been more interesting. It looks like you can even hit the snake off of him.
Oh!
Because it has two different animations. One where it kind of just leaves by itself once it's done, because when it bites into him, it has like sort of a soul sucker kind of noise.
Okay.
But then it just sort of stops and goes back. Like it's done now. But there's a different one which has like the hit noise. It gets like launched back from him. The animation is actually just incredibly brutal. It helps with how they try to describe the man-eater. Because it's sort of just standing there, and the snake just goes up and bites him, like, in the back of the neck.
Ew.
And it recoils in pain, and then it falls to the ground, and the snake just continues to bite him.
Ugh.
It is very, it's very brutal.
Ugh. Yeah. I think that would have been cool. I think this is something that would have really been cool if we could have kept this.
More interaction with the boss, it's definitely, I like it a lot. It's a cool idea.
Yeah. I love those little imp boys and those cat dogs in Elden Ring, where you throw the crystal darts at them and they electrify and then they become your allies. Well, not allies, but they aggro on other enemies.
Those are really funny. I like those a lot. They're very annoying to fight, but
yeah,
I like that little mechanic to have.
I also love I love when enemies in these games are very, very silly, and I think those watchdogs in Elden Ring are very, very, very silly looking.
Being silly is good, like with crystal lizards and their like animation when they leave and they kind of like just dance.
Yeah. Speaking of crystal lizards, they used to have an attack animation? What?
Yeah, so IG 3300 and 3000 and 3000 in general. I've messed up. ID 3000, they kind of just like move. I don't know what they were thinking when they originally designed that. It's a very like little weak by attack. I got it to work in game, but it doesn't actually hit correctly. It also rotates the opposite direction. Doesn't look right. But it's kind of just like a little like smack to like, oh, get away from me, just I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe like an earlier design when they first made the lizard, and then they decided we kind of just want them to run away.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a good case of like good pruning. Good that this isn't in there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right then. Next up we have the alternate Flame Lurker moveset.
So the Flame Lurker has an entire different like moveset. I want to get it working, but I haven't yet. Eventually I will. But it's a little more. So the actual Flame Lurker moveset's a little like animalistic kind of in a way. Just the way he fights, it's very jumping around the arena, slamming fists down against the ground. But in the alternate set, it's a little more defined. He like kind of puts up his arms more in a more general like fighting sort of stance. He's like about like kicking attacks.
Yeah.
It's just generally a little more unique. Although I like what they did in the end. It would have been interesting if they incorporated that like little other section of his moves into it, where you could like maybe at some point in the fight, like he starts to fight in a different way entirely. Like that would be really. Maybe he starts out really dignified, and the more you fight him, the lower his health gets, he starts to become a little more like, sort of like Horalu.
Yeah. I was gonna say like the reverse of Ludwig, but no, just like Horalu. That's a much better way of describing it. Yeah, I think that could have been. If they did it like that, I think that would have been cool. Especially, I think the Flame Lurker is probably the weakest boss in Demon's Souls. Like in terms of having interesting stuff going on.
Okay, yeah, okay. I was like, weak. People complain about.
No, I mean, I just mean in terms of like even like Leechmonger. Like, there's an interesting gimmick there, and even like a Dirty Colossus is probably another pretty weak boss, but like. There's at least like something happening there, like an interesting gimmick. Flame Lurker that's just like roll around and attack him. But if he had like different phases where he gets more crazy the longer you fight him, I think that could have been really cool.
That would have been, yeah, I think that would have been a little more interesting.
I'm putting that in the should have stayed interesting department.
Okay, finally a few more up there.
Well, that's the second biggest one. The least popular category.
Should have stayed uninteresting.
Yeah. We have like it was one of the most popular ones when we started, but as we progressively go on, it's like, nope.
Never mind.
But also, you notice that every time we jump from categories, like when we jump from enemies or like weapons and items and enemies and stuff, it's like they all slot very much like in their own category. So like alternate enemies and stuff, that's almost all should have been cut because that all almost should have been cut. Whereas weapons, that like almost every weapon aside from maybe the gun would have made a bit more interesting for builds and stuff. Young old hero.
So this is the textures that are put onto the diffused one, actually. I have yet to assign them correctly to him, but it's just another test model. It's included in just the general test objects. But it's so you know the statue of the king in the mausoleum?
Statue of the king?
In Boletaria.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the same like model they use there. It has more of the actual like Shrine of Storm stuff. They kind of just took that model and put some armor on it. But it has very wild hair. It still uses the large sword of searching.
Do you think that's a case of like this is some lore stuff that they were gonna do where like the old hero was the founder of Boletaria, or is this a case of they just reused the same model?
I mean, both of those are possible.
Yeah.
I like both of those ideas. It equal chances. It could be both.
I think this is a case of I think this is interesting. But should it have stayed?
I mean, technically it is in the game, just from that model, but I don't think as a boss fight, I like the kind of, like, larger-than-life figure we have.
Yeah.
As the final version of it.
Yeah, I do like the idea of if like if we have the demons as like manifestations of people's dreams and stuff, like in like the that sort of ritual of the Shrine of Storms is sort of made manifest with the bosses there, and we get to see the young old hero. He's the same guy as they worship in Boletaria, but it's like a different culture's version of him. I think that could have been interesting. But as for the boss fight itself, I think the one we got is much more interesting.
Definitely, yeah.
So I could go either way. I think the lore ramifications would have been interesting, but boss fight wise, I think it's much better what we got. Okay.
Speaking of boss fights, with the old hero, there's actually a test object. Well, it's actually in Shrine of Storm objects. It is object 3290. It is a sort of ghostly figure of them.
Yes.
It is a kind of faded out like shadow of them, and they have a single animation where they're like, it's while you're fighting, they do like a swipe up with their weapon, and then they start floating into the air, and they like strike a pose, and they disappear.
Huh.
I don't know what to think of it. I'd like to think that while you're fighting them, like another version of them could pop up and like swipe at you, then disappear.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been really interesting, but as far as we have right now, it's just a model with a pretty interesting animation.
Alright. Do you think the boss would have been made better with that? Because I think there's something to the gimmick of he can't see you, but he can hear you.
I think the boss would have been about the same.
Alright.
I definitely would have more surprises for the player, but like...
Sure.
His general gimmick and understanding right now, I think it works well.
Alright, I mean, I can go either way on this one. I think that's interesting. Maybe could have been cool. Alright, so we have the alternate texture for poison jelly.
So it's just the the enemy in Valley Defilement, but it's slightly different texture than we have in the game currently. There's another enemy similar to that. The slugs actually have another model. I think it's another object model where they have a slightly different texture. It's not used. I think it's like bright green. It's in the same realm as just something that's a little small, kind of interesting, but maybe not like it wouldn't make a difference if it was in there or not in there.
All right. I think that's very much. I would actually say that's on the uninteresting side, because that's just like, I feel like this is just one of those things that happens in development where they're like, oh, we just changed the textures out.
Yeah, it's not that interesting. I just don't include it.
All right. Beta female shadow lurker.
So in the concept art of the game, you have a Shrine of Storms page, and it has the art for a shadow lurker, and has a female shadow lurker design, but it's different than we have now. It is a little more just like, I don't know the way to. It's more feminine in a way. It's less like of the shadowy figures we got now.
Mm-hmm.
It's the model itself exists in the game. It is object 9518. It's probably a good thing someone's cut. I don't think it really helped much or served any purpose. It's almost too human-like. The thing looks just like a person, except their nails are really long, and that's it.
Oh.
So it's not really that like. It's for the best that it was cut. It's a little interesting that we have something that was in the art book that was just like a leftover from that design.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's not like too important.
All right. Then we have the Gloom set with cut weapons.
So at the end of the IDs for all of the test objects, there are armor sets, and one of them, of course, is the Gloom set, and it has it's like a rapier and a shield. I'm pretty sure I could probably just put it in the game and have it work, but I haven't actually tried yet. It's a little. It looks like what you expect looking with the weapon. It matches with the armor relatively well. It's sort of interesting. It adds more weapons to the game. I think it's like in a realm of should have stayed but uninteresting.
Okay.
Because if Yurt was using, I feel like Shodels fit Yurt better.
Yeah, very
than
much.
If it was to be just a sword and shield.
Yeah. But like just from the perspective of more weapons, more items, I think that's like sort of interesting. Would have been cool.
Yeah, I think it's like right in the middle of should have stayed and like a little uninteresting. I think if it was in the game, it wouldn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah.
But as like cut content, it's like kind of interesting.
Yeah. I think if it wasn't attached to the Gloom set, it wouldn't have been nearly as interesting.
Yeah, if it was just blank weapons, I don't think it'd be as cool, but if it's directly with it.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay, now we're up to the mechanics. True Death. This sounds to me like it's a thing that it's what it sounds like.
Kind of, yes. It's pretty self-explanatory from what its name is.
Just was this like an optional mechanic, or was this just like how the game used to work?
It looks like how the game used to work.
Just you have one life and that's it.
Kind of. How it's described in the text is true death occurs when you die in ghost mode. True death resets your items and status to starting levels. To prevent this, rewrite a soul sign, begin multiplay, or access the blood mark found at the place where you died.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's it.
So like it's not. It's more like the world resetting in Majora's Mask, where you kind of have like maybe even like. I'm trying to think about this. With like, if you kill a boss and you get true death, would the boss remain dead? Or
I don't have a lot from it. It's more like just of how there used to be like the ghost form as it's already is punishing. I think of it more as if like ghost form was the last thing you wanted to be in. You wanted to be human all the time, so you wanted to be doing multiplayer actively so you could stay alive. Mm-hmm. And if you died, you would lost all your stuff, and the game would like restart.
Oh,
that's what I think of it, at least.
Okay, I'm really happy this was cut then, but I think this is super interesting stuff.
But the thing about the way it's written is, it also could kind of be interpreted as like, well, at least with the part where it says, or access the blood mark found at the place where you died.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like, oh, well, you're talking about losing all your souls. Maybe at some point you're supposed to lose like all your grass, something too, or like, because maybe when you died, because you have the text of like, the crestfallen warrior asking if you've seen your corpse, like if you've seen his corpse on the map, and like if you have seen his corporeal flesh. So it could be like, maybe you're supposed to go back to your body and then get your stuff back, and if you die, you just lose all your weapons, armor, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So he's like, his questline might be like a lingering, like might be referencing mechanics that aren't even there anymore. Like not quite.
Possibly, yeah.
That would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool.
Okay, so I gotta change this up here.
Okay, so I think True Death is like as interesting as anything, but it's like the most should have been cut out of anything.
Yeah, definitely.
The idea that they were really trying to push you into actively engaging with the multiplayer, that does kind of feel like Armored Core, like in the arena fights, where like you're kind of like made complicit in, like maybe like with Demon Souls you could help people, but like with the invasions, they're kind of making you complicit in the invasions and terrorizing of other players more. I think that could have been cool, but like mainly conceptually, I think in action probably it wouldn't have worked nearly as well.
Yeah, it's like most things. It's a good idea, but like probably for the best they don't have it.
Yeah. Like maybe if this was just its own game, you could build something on top of that. But for Demon Souls specifically, there's so much more going on that you don't need True Death on top of everything else. We have here the alt summoning system.
Yeah, so there's an alternate summoning system where it worked more like you had a single soul sign you'd write, and if your character tendency was more towards a human, you'd be summoned as a phantom, and if your tendency was more towards a demon, you'd be summoned as a black phantom.
Oh.
So I generally really like the idea. I think it's a great way to incorporate player tendency, all that stuff into it. But also understand how, from a gameplay perspective, it can be annoying if you want to be summoned as a summon, but let's say you killed Crestfallen Warriors, so you can get a little more souls starting at the start of the game.
Yeah.
Like, then that could definitely be a bit annoying. But I really like the idea. I think it's a really good idea, honestly.
Yeah, it's like Todd Howard talked about this for Starfield, where they used to have a mechanic where, like, if you run out of fuel and you get stranded on a planet, then you have to, like, kind of solve that. You have to find more fuel, and that made a lot of sense for, like, just like in terms of like just game design, that made so much interesting sense. And it really got you into the mindset of like, I'm stranded and I'm a human being lost out here in space. But that they ultimately cut it because it just kind of broke the game experience, where like that's not why anybody's playing the game, right? So maybe that's good for a survival mode, but for the kind of game Starfield is going to be, it's not out by the time we're talking, for that kind of experience, that mechanic really hurts. I think that's kind of the issue with the old summoning system, where it sounds really cool, but it might have played not as good as what we got.
What we got is probably for the best, but it's one of the more interesting cut things. I think implementing more, like, you could tell at points they really wanted to put more world tendency and character tendency events, like the Executioner Grounds key. Like, they removed that entirely just so they can put a world tendency event there, and it was for the better, but in some circumstances, having less of it probably is for the best.
Yeah. I'm gonna put that in the, it's just underneath True Death, where it's like, it's not quite as interesting, and it's not quite as obvious that this should have been cut, but, yeah. And then we have the last of the mechanics, which is the name change.
So, actually, I wrote that down. So, the actual kind of mechanic change is just the old, like, tape your schools to go to, the Archstones to work back to the Nexus. It's originally referred to as the Stone Monolith.
Okay.
They're kind of just these stone pillars. They act the same way, where they just allow you to go back and forth between it, but it's really, like, listed down between, like, the Nexus is there, but you are not, like, bound to the Nexus unable to die. You are bound to the Monolith.
Alright.
It's just like a slight different change they did, where they kind of made it more about the Nexus than a different thing that's inside the levels, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, I think, like, ultimately this is pretty inconsequential, though.
I just like how much it's, like, mentioned, because in basically all the cut stuff, like, for ghosts, like the mechanics I talked about earlier, the alternate summoning system, it brings up stone monoliths. For the True Death system, it says when you die you are warped to a stone monolith. Like, it's brought up everywhere.
Oh. Alright. I think that's yeah, it's probably better that they cut it then.
It's probably for the best, yes.
Yeah. And finally, we are getting to some maps.
Yes, the maps.
Whoops, banging my microphone. Everybody, it's very hard to sit down for like an hour plus conversation. You have to move your legs. Okay, so you have test tutorials.
Yeah, so there are some old versions of the tutorial on the map. In the MSBs, there are map 9999_10 through 1112. They're all just, they have different models, and they're all just kind of like slightly earlier versions of the map. As much as there's content already left in the basic maps, it's kind of just like the same general idea with a few things just left in there. It's very, the levels are more connected in a way. You don't warp between them. You just walk through them.
Yeah.
But they don't actually walk. It's more like you go into a region and it warps you to the next place. You can go back and forth between them. Generally, it's just like slightly worse models. Not like entirely like, oh, these models are just bad, but they're a little like less like all together. It does have some of my favorite little spots to it, like it had the original vaulting, where on the bridge, instead of just dropping down to the hole there would be a slight little dip in it where you can vault over it.
I think they reintegrated that in the remake.
They did, yes, and that was a good idea.
Yeah, because vaulting, it's like, it is there in so many levels, but like, if you don't know about it, you might not think to use it.
Yeah, like people going down to start on the first level by just like jumping onto the stairs because you're like starting a higher level and just walk off it to land on it.
Yeah.
Not actually vaulting. Vaulting is actually used more than once. The more popular ones when they restored in the remake, but at the very start of the level, there's only a bunch of boxes in a row that you could vault over. Just like a sort of early introduction to it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's all there. It's pretty cool.
So where you? So I'm like, yeah, vaulting. If the tutorials, if the only difference is we get to interact more with the vaulting, I think the old tutorials would have been better. But are there any like drawbacks? Are these maybe not as tightly directed, or?
This is just for the first map right now. I think at least the first map is generally like. It feels about the same as what it was before, like as it is in the final product. There's not really any like further drawbacks in it though. It's kind of just like the characters aren't in the correct way. They're not Dreglings. They're all just test enemies. The enemies from Valley Defilement.
Okay.
Because they kind of just float around. It's not as tightly like directed in a way of how the level's supposed to make you go through it. I mean, it is the same path, but it doesn't actually like try to coordinate it as well. It's kind of just walk straight forward for most of it. It's not as fleshed out, but I feel like with what was here that they cut, there's like nothing offensive about it. It's just kind of some little small changes.
All right. Why did they segment the tutorial map the way they did? Do you know that?
Okay, so. That's a weird question. I'll try to explain, but so every single map is split up in different ways. So Boletaria is split into 4 different maps. There is 0, 1, 2, 3. There's first level, second level, third level, fourth level, just so you can... There's only points between levels where it loads in the next one, and then once you get past that point, it no longer loads in the previous level.
Okay.
The way they split up this tutorial is really weird. Because it's the exact same way it was before, but originally having warping between them, it works, but it's annoying to have loading screens and all the enemies revive when you go back and forth between them. So it's not actually that like cohesive. Generally, they split it up in a way so that way they could actually have it like work. They moved to just warping between them using. One of the archstones in the first level, but in the first one, it feels like it's supposed to be like one of the later levels where you can just walk between them and it's kind of freeform and it just works. But it wasn't like at a point in development where they actually had that. I think they're just kind of going with different maps and just moving between them. It's usually a bad sign in maps when the like IDs used for events are like super low. Normally you have. For events like if you're warping, it could be event ID 10,030. It could be like that. Mm-hmm. But for this map, it's like this event to have an enemy walk towards you is entity ID 10. It's a low value, so it's a test map. It's supposed to be a low value because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a lot earlier in development. I actually have released a mod that restores part of the second level because there's a balcony in it, which I restored all of it in the functioning one. You can play through it and use the little lever to go back to the start of the level. It's all right there.
Is that the part where you can get that really beautiful scenic vista of like those sun rays beaming down?
Yes, it is.
I love that place.
So you can go there and you can play it. It's on Nexus somewhere.
All right. What's the deal with map 11? Is there much difference there then?
So map 11 is the second map, which I've talked about a bit now. The main difference is there is a ladder going between like in the room with the food and the hanging crocodiles. Before you reach Vanguard Demon, there is a ladder there. There's that entire cut vista I was talking about. There's they basically just like cut segments which you just kind of trimmed off, made it more of a go straight through it, don't really think about that much kind of exploration instead.
Okay. And map 12, is that, I'm assuming that's the alternate Dragon God arena, or?
Yes, that is the Dragon God one.
Okay.
The dragon, originally between all these levels, there were points to just walk between them. When you beat Vanguard Demon initially, you wouldn't have just warped there. There was actually a tunnel going from the boss where you could, well, it warps, but technically if we had working, I think the shadows are going right now actually, MCGs and MCPs, you could just walk between the levels and you'd be a Dragon God. So it's kind of like a little sectioned off cave. We've already spoken about that whole Dragon God thing. The actual boss arena isn't any really different. It's structured the same way. All the events are basically the same. There's a few leftovers in there, but it's about the same stuff. Besides little like region points of exploding lava, and like when you're underground.
Okay. Okay, so all these test tutorial maps, they do sound like they would have been a bit more interesting than what we got. Like, just if we could just get vaulting, right? If we could just get like these little, like if we could just get the balcony. If we could just get these little differences, I think that would have been so much cooler.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff that they just like got rid of at some point, and I don't think that's really much of them being there. Just kind of helps the flow of the level and teaches you more of how to play the game than without it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no ladders in the original tutorial. There's none there, but in the beta one there is. You can learn about how perfect ladders are in Demon Souls, and I will defend them to my last breath.
You like the slow ladders?
I like the slow ladders. I think if they're used correctly, they can be better than fast ladders. I think that's just the truth. Especially in Boletaria, because you have like the little segments in the third level where you're like, let's say third or fourth level. I can't think of it actually. Third level, yeah, where you're like, there's like small little ladders you can climb up, and it's like, oh, you could just run past these enemies which are attacking you and have crossbows, or you can slowly climb this ladder up there. Mm-hmm.
I like the idea, and I think we talked about this off mic, of breakable ladders. So you're like,
that's a good idea.
So you're like, yeah, you're climbing up, and then if you leave the enemies down there, they don't go up and chase you. They just wait until you're up high enough, and then they just break the ladder, and you collapse.
I mean, I love that idea. If that gets put somewhere in a mod, then don't be too surprised. No royalties. Yeah, I gotta get those $1 million mod royalties. I also like the idea of because I think Demon Souls has the tightest level design of the entire franchise, like of the entire Miyazaki era From games. And I think there's so many interesting tricks used to sort of guide the player and to contextualize progress. I think it could have been interesting if you're like climbing a ladder and then it just naturally breaks because of your weight and you fall back to the ground. But when you fall to the ground, you actually fall through the ground because it's like old rickety wood. And that's how you unlock like a drop point to the next part of the level. Just like that's actually that's a really good idea.
Thank you. Just like little stuff like this, I like. I think subsequent
little interactable events that are not like too like just like little surprises. Like there's the thing about defilement where you're going down where you can, if you land on the little wooden planks.
Yeah.
Planks, it like collapses beneath you.
Yeah, and maybe if you attack the ground there, you strike it 3 times, it just breaks naturally, so you don't have to climb the ladder if you don't want to. But like, I think that's so missing after Demon Souls. It's just like these weird little quirky environmental set pieces. But
yeah, definitely.
For test tutorials, I mean, I'm comfortable putting this up into the should have stayed. Obviously, we're assuming they get the fully fleshed out enemies and stuff like that too.
yeah, better, like, if they just took the parts from it that were, like, a little more... I mean, I'm literally doing that, so, like... exactly that.
That would have been really, like, if I was like, no, that's garbage, that shouldn't have stayed. It's like, but I'm doing it.
I'm not stopping now. I mean, what do you want me to do?
No, but I think that sounds so cool.
It is definitely good, yeah.
And we have the Lost Shrine of Storm levels. I only knew about like the walkway to the first part, but you have 2 levels mapped here.
Yeah, so there is the first level, which Drop Off has actually stored a little while back, which is kind of this long walkway with some general enemies on it, and then you just reach the first actual start of it.
Okay.
And that's all there really is to talk about there. There's a few things that are underground, where it's kind of just like rocks lining up and going through it.
Is that
one's a little less interesting. It's just like something they maybe started with planning before they just moved to, let's just start them in the actual place themselves.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. I think like there's the impulse to like, no, it should have stayed because I want to play that. But at the same time, there's like sometimes stuff is cut for a reason, and like probably starting in the thick of it is like it probably flows a bit better.
Yeah, it's there's not enough actually in that like test one where it doesn't actually work. Just not enough there.
Yeah.
If there was more to it, then you can actually like you could justify it being there more, but it's relatively just a flat plane.
Okay, so let's put that in the interesting but should have been cut.
Where everything is.
Where everything is. And you also have the Test Shrine of Storm level.
Yeah, so that is M301_00_99. It is the same, like, structurally, it's about the same level as what's used in game for the first level.
Mm-hmm.
Although, like, for instance, instead of having a Vanguard Demon, you have the Tower Knight.
Oh.
It's a little more just, like, put there as a test than, if anything, it is referencing the events, but it's just disabling it from existing. But the events level are more interesting, if anything. They kind of have, like, a level of you would go in and you would hear people, like, yelling for help, and they're being attacked, and then you have to go and save them, and then the thing is, all of the, like, dialogue we have for it is completely gone. We don't have anything for what it could have, like, what they would have said, what it would have sounded like.
Typical.
But we do have just, like, comments in the actual...
on the map itself?
Lua. In the Lua for the map, where it's just going, like, person yelling for help, check if this person's dead, if they're close by, just a bunch of different checks. I'd say it's relatively interesting. I like the idea they have level, but kind of leaving it as more like a little desolate place where Grave Robber Blige and Patches are is a little better, I think. Yeah.
I think maybe if you could have had those voices screaming for help, but you don't necessarily have the corpses. So it's just like, are these ghosts? Like, where are these voices coming from? But then again, it's like, so much of the ambience of Shrine of Storms is from that it's just like a gigantic cemetery.
It's just like empty. It's just the only people there is a Grave Robber and Patches.
Yeah.
So I think it almost works better just with how it is now compared to what was in it initially.
Yeah, I think that's like very interesting, but it's probably best that it is the way it is now.
Definitely, yeah.
All right. Oh, wait a minute! I didn't even notice this.
What's that?
The really lost Shrine of Storms.
Level. Yeah, so this is a...
You even had to clarify the spelling. It's like Leyu.Fliver. Fliver.
Fliver. I don't know if I actually pronounce Fliver. I just say Fliver because what I've said for so long. It's pretty common in maps to have a layout, like model, or even for nav meshes that happens pretty often.
Oh yeah.
But it's spelled wrong. It has no T. It's just Leo.Fliver. It is a completely different map than any Shrine of Storm levels we have.
Okay.
Gravity, who is, as I mentioned before, a member on the Restoration Project, has actually gotten it to the point where you can walk around in it, you can play through it. Got textures assigned to it. It is incredible. It is a model, and what the entire thing is it's basically just like several different like kind of small islands with bridges connecting them together. I'll send you footage of it, which you can put on screen or just, I don't know, have a little section where it's just walking through it. I'll probably make a video about it at some point.
Okay.
Actually, I'm gonna pull up some images real quick because I want to look at it larger in the actual stuff I talk about. I remember it, but I don't have an image in front of me, so I can't actually like talk about it too much.
Is this a case of like this is just like an early layout which they then went away from, kind of like we have in the fishing hamlet?
Kind of. See, it actually includes the actual start of normal Shrine of Storms.
Oh.
Well, it lines up to it at least. It doesn't actually work correctly.
Okay.
Okay, let me rephrase that. The layout fliver does not include the original Shrine of Storm maps. It lines up to it incredibly well, but doesn't actually include it. What it initially was is you would start kind of in a wooded, forested area.
Okay.
Where you move through a straight kind of path where you reach your first house. You go through the house. You have couple off-branching paths with more houses, small bridges connecting several different islands with more desolate structures. And it all leads to a final structure at the end of it where there may or may not have been a boss. Right now there's no boss, there's no data for it, and then the actual level starts. That's like the first level would lead to the second level, as they all do. But it's just a little more like put together there.
That does sound really cool. I do think Demon's Souls is really missing like a forest area. And just the idea of like rummaging through people's houses, Dark Souls 2 style, also sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, it would have been really cool to actually have in-game. Eventually.
Yeah.
We'll get it fully working. I need to talk to Gravity about that actually, because they haven't sent me the files because I haven't asked for them. But I will get you some footage for that.
Alright, awesome. The only thing left to talk about then... Oh wait, where should we put this? I think this is like very interesting. I don't know if it should, like, I would have loved to have that as another thing, but I don't know if necessarily it should have been there at the expense of the Shrine of Storms level we got.
I think, with it being there, Shrine of Storms would almost feel like another Boletaria.
Yeah.
I think, because it would have the same, like, amount of maps, and it would feel about as large as Boletaria, and that's not really an issue, but Boletaria is kind of this grand level where it's supposed to be like larger than all the other ones. It's supposed to be like it's the level. It blocks you off from going and continuing until you kill a archdemon.
Yeah.
I really like it, but it's maybe better that it's not there. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I'm spun down the middle.
Like if they could have repurposed that as like this is just another place that you can visit. Like, that would have been cool.
Yeah, if it was a little optional area you could visit, like I'd be fine with that. That'd be great.
Yeah, like you can, if you explore in the Nexus, you can find a hidden door, and there's a 7th Archstone, and that just takes you there, and it's like, what is this place? And it's just like retrofitted to be, like, this is where the Maiden in Black maybe came from, or I don't know, something. It's just like, I would have loved to see it, but not necessarily as the Shrine of Storms level.
You go back and you go to a door, and then you go back in time to a new Nexus where it's just a single archstone in the middle.
Oh,
and you use that one.
Oh yeah,
interesting idea.
And you find a little baby in the level, and the baby
and it's in a carriage, and you have to
and you have to get candle wax and pour over its face, over its eyes.
Yeah, and if you get in the carriage, a cutscene starts, and then once the cutscene's over, the horses that pulled it are dead.
Oh no.
It's all genius. It's all constant. It's all right there.
The master Miyazaki strikes again.
Exactly.
Alright, so the only thing left to talk about then is the Northern Limit, and I think we should do that as its own video. This has been really fun. I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I hope everybody watching learned a lot. Do you wanna tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm basically Thens everywhere. On YouTube, Thens DeS, probably be linked below. I'm on Twitter. That's really the only place I have. I have a Discord server for the mod. If you want, you can join in there and you can be angry it's not out yet, and then I'll kick you. So, your choice.
Hey, you know, I have people coming to me that are like, when's the Silent Hill 4 commentary? And I'm like, God dang it. I know what it's like.
When it's done.
When it's done, it's done. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope everybody sticks around for when we do the Northern Limit talk.
That one's gonna be more interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think this was really interesting, but hopefully it'll be...
I think it's gonna be interesting coming from the perspective of someone who's been working only with that map for like, I don't know, almost a year now. So maybe that's what I mean by it. But yeah, it's this stuff's all interesting. It's definitely
but this is all like this is so interesting in like a non sequitur kind of way. Whereas in the Northern Limit, that's a much broader, denser conversation, I think.
Definitely, yeah. It's more focused on just one thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for being here, and peace out.